Hey everyone, welcome back. We've got a fresh story to share today, so let's dive in. I'm Ryan, and for 5 years, I thought I had it all. A happy marriage with my wife, Emma. People would have called it stable, healthy, a partnership built on trust. We supported each other. We rarely argued, and everything felt just right. Isn't that what marriage is supposed to be? A place where you grow together, build your dreams, and always have each other's back? But recently, things began to change. At first, I didn't notice. It was subtle, a shift so small that I could dismiss it as stress or maybe just a tough week. But the more time passed, the more it became clear that something was wrong. Emma had always been affectionate. Whenever I'd come home from work, she'd greet me with a warm hug, sometimes even a long kiss, like she genuinely missed me. But now, the kisses were barely there, a quick peck, almost like an obligation. Our conversations, once effortless and filled with laughter, had become strained. I'd ask her about her day, and her responses were brief, distant. Her voice, once filled with warmth, now sounded cold, detached. We weren't living as a couple anymore. We were just coexisting. Then came the mood swings. One minute, she'd be lost in thought, distant. The next, she'd snap at me over the smallest things. I'd ask her if something was wrong, and every time, she'd just say, "I'm fine, Ryan." But I knew she wasn't. The more I tried to understand, the more confused I became. I kept thinking back to when we first met, the easy days when we'd talk for hours, lie in bed, planning our future, laughing about nothing. We were a team, and now it felt like she was slipping away, pulling away from me with every passing day, like the tide slowly moving further from the shore. I tried everything I could think of, planned date nights, checked in with her emotionally, even did extra chores around the house, just to see if it would spark any reaction, but nothing changed. One night, I lay there in bed, staring up at the ceiling. It had been months since Emma and I had been intimate. I spent hours reading everything I could find online about reconnecting with a distant spouse, relationship advice, forums, articles. Everything pointed to one thing: intimacy. Physical touch was supposed to reignite emotional closeness. So I decided to try something simple. I reached for her hand, nothing forceful, just a gentle gesture. But the moment my fingers touched hers, she pulled away as though I had burned her. "Just leave me alone," she said, her voice cold. I tried again, this time more carefully. "Emma, please, talk to me. What's going on? Did I do something wrong?" She didn't respond. She just lay there, facing away from me, stiff as a board. It felt like she was waiting for me to stop talking. I reached out again, placing my hand on her shoulder, desperate for some sign of connection. I just needed her to look at me, to say something that might ease the tension in the room. That's when it happened. She snapped, "Don't touch me. I can't stand you." Her words sliced through the silence, more cutting than anything I had ever heard from her. It felt like a punch to the gut, like I was physically struck. I searched her face for some sign that she didn't mean it, that it was just frustration talking, but there was nothing, just cold, emotionless disdain. I didn't know how to respond. I couldn't. My mind shut down. I turned over, staring at the ceiling, numb. And for the first time in our marriage, I wasn't sure if this was something that could be fixed. I stopped asking her questions, not because I didn't want answers, but because I knew I wasn't going to get any. It felt like I wasn't her partner anymore. I was just a roommate. So I started watching, paying attention to the little things. And that's when I noticed Emma had begun falling asleep in random places. She fell asleep at the kitchen table, her head resting on her arms, her laptop still open in front of her. I once found her napping on the couch in the middle of the afternoon, her phone still clutched in her hand, the screen dimmed from inactivity. That wasn't like Emma. She'd never been the type to just doze off anywhere like that. Then there were the mornings. Even after a full night's sleep, she always looked exhausted. Sometimes she'd rush to the bathroom the second she got up, and I'd hear the toilet flush minutes later, like she'd been sick, like she'd thrown up. But the most worrying change, she was leaving the house more often. Emma had never been secretive before. If she had errands to run, she'd always tell me. If she was meeting friends, she'd share who she was with and where she was going. But recently, she'd just disappear. I'd come home from work, and she wouldn't be there. No text, no note, nothing. Hours would pass before she'd walk through the door like nothing had happened. And when I'd ask where she had been, she'd dodge the question, acting like I was overreacting for even asking. I thought about following her, trying to figure out where she was going, but I knew I couldn't do it without making things worse. So I hired a private investigator. It took about a week for him to get back to me. "We have confirmation," he said. And just like that, everything clicked. Emma was seeing someone else. This was the answer I'd been searching for. This was why she had been avoiding me. I could have confronted her then and there, thrown the evidence in her face, demanded an explanation, and watched her try to justify it all. But I didn't, because at that moment, something else became clear to me. She'd already made her choice. She'd already decided that I wasn't enough, and I wasn't about to beg a woman to love me when she'd already given that love to someone else. No, she didn't deserve a confrontation. She deserved to be blindsided. I made my decision right there. I was going to divorce her, and I was going to make sure she never saw it coming. The house was quiet when I walked in one evening. I'd left work early, determined to find a missing document I needed for the divorce process. My lawyer had asked for it days ago, and I'd been putting off looking for it. I went straight to our bedroom, heading for my side of the closet where I kept important paperwork. I rifled through the shelves, flipping through folders and stacks of old receipts, but found nothing. Frustrated, I sighed and ran a hand over my face. Maybe I had left it somewhere else. Then a thought struck me. What if Emma had accidentally put it with her things? It wouldn't be the first time something of mine ended up on her side of the closet. Without thinking, I turned to her side and began checking through her things. But what I found instead made my breath catch in my throat. There, tucked inside a plain white envelope, was a pregnancy ultrasound. For a few moments, my mind refused to process what I was looking at. Emma was pregnant. My hands shook as I carefully pulled the paper out, my eyes scanning the details. Over a month along, my heart started pounding. She hadn't told me. As I read the date on the ultrasound, my mind began to calculate, piecing together the timeline. Was this why she'd been so distant? Was this why she had snapped at me that night in bed? Why she had looked at me like I was a stranger? Then another thought hit me, a far darker thought. Could it even be mine? I couldn't sit on this information. I needed answers, and I needed them now. I don't even remember how the rest of the evening passed. Time blurred together, and all I could think about was the storm that was brewing in my mind. The sound of the door keys brought me back to reality. The door opened, and Emma stepped inside, completely unaware of the chaos that was about to unfold. She was busy looking at her phone, barely glancing up as she entered. I didn't wait for her to settle in. "How long have you known you were pregnant?" The words left my mouth before I could even think about softening them. Emma froze mid-step, her body locking up, her mouth parted, but no words came out. A tense silence hung between us. After a long moment, she swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. I was planning to tell you. I couldn't believe it. Planning, I repeated, standing up from the couch, my entire body tense. Why the hell would you need to prepare to tell your husband that you're pregnant? Or, is the baby not mine? The second the words left my mouth, I saw it, the briefest hesitation in her eyes. Emma quickly straightened up, forcing her voice to sound steady as she blurted, "Of course it's yours." I didn't believe her, not for a second. I stepped closer, my voice steady but firm. "We'll do a DNA test." Emma broke. A choked sob escaped her throat, and I could see the tears building behind her eyes. "I don't know who the father is." I felt those words hit me like a punch. It wasn't just a confession. It was the death sentence for everything we had built together. For months, I had felt something wasn't right. I had questioned myself, wondered if I was imagining things, if I was overreacting. But this was the confirmation I never wanted. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "Get ready. The divorce papers will be ready soon." Emma dropped to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably, begging me to reconsider, to not rush into this, to give her a chance to explain. But I didn't care anymore. There was nothing left to explain. Emma didn't make it easy during the divorce. At first, she cried, but it wasn't long before the anger came. She fought me every step of the way, dragging out the court proceedings, making the process as painful as possible. She wanted the house, spousal support, and tried to argue that 5 years of marriage meant she deserved something. I let my lawyer handle it. I wasn't about to argue. I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction. Then the DNA test results came back. They confirmed what I already knew. The baby wasn't mine. Emma shut down completely. No more excuses. excuses. No more fights over assets. She had nothing left to stand on. The court sided with me. She walked away with nothing significant. I don't regret leaving, not for a second. If I had stayed, if I had let her manipulate me, I would have been raising another man's child, trapped in a lie I never asked for. By the time the divorce was finalized, I had already emotionally checked out. The fights, the long, drawn-out legal battles, it all drained me. It wasn't until months later that I finally got the full story of Emma's affair. Through mutual friends and bits of information that came to light during court proceedings, I learned everything. When Emma found out she was pregnant, she turned to her lover, the man she had risked everything for. She expected him to step up, to prove that leaving me hadn't been in vain, that they could be a family now, that she had burned her bridges with me. But reality hit her hard. Her lover didn't want the baby. He told her flat out to get rid of it. He wasn't ready to be a father. He didn't want the responsibility. He wasn't about to change his life for her. Emma was shocked. She had convinced herself that leaving me was the start of something better, that she was walking into a new life where she'd finally be happy. But instead, she realized she had destroyed everything for nothing. And that's when she snapped. Instead of facing the truth that she had made a horrible mistake, she turned all that anger on me. That's why she became distant. That's why she couldn't look at me. That's why she said she couldn't stand me. It wasn't about me. She was angry at herself. Angry that she had bet on the wrong man. Angry that she had given up a stable, committed partner for someone who tossed her aside the moment things got real. And I was just the easiest target for all that bitterness, regret, and self-loathing. She wasn't disgusted by me. She was disgusted by herself. But by the time I realized all of this, it didn't matter anymore. By then, I had already walked away. I'm grateful I paid attention. If I had ignored the signs, if I had convinced myself that it was just a phase, I could have ended up raising another man's child. That's the reality. Some men look away. They ignore that gut feeling when something feels off. They convince themselves their wife or girlfriend is just going through a tough time and that she'll come back to them eventually. But let me tell you this, if someone doesn't want you, you'll feel it. I felt it, and I'm glad I listened. It's better to be divorced than to raise a child born from betrayal. That's my truth. That's my lesson. And if you've made it this far in the story, I want to hear from you. Would you have handled it differently? Would you have forgiven her? Or would you have done exactly what I did? Walk away, knowing you deserve better. Drop your thoughts in the comment. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and turn on notifications so you never miss more shocking real-life stories like this. See you in the next one.